After 5 years of marriage, my husband had always doted on me. Unexpectedly, after we conceived a child of love, he actually asked me to sell the premarital house I had bought and purchase a school district house instead. I pondered over it. That house was worth over $8 million. How much could a husband be worth? So I resolutely had the child aborted and changed my husband. When my husband proposed to me, I told him I didn't want to have children too early, and he readily agreed. However, not long after marriage I found out I was pregnant. How could this be? Clearly, we had taken precautions every time. I wept to my husband with the medical report in my hand. He hugged me tightly and softly comforted me, saying it didn't matter. My dear, if you don't want the baby, we can just have an abortion. I knew he had always loved children very much. For my sake, he could only look at other people's children rushing into their father's arms with envy. I didn't want to make my husband sad, nor did I want an innocent little life to lose its life because of my carelessness. So I had to muster up the courage to say I wanted the baby. Upon hearing this, my husband was so happy that he was at a loss for words. That night, he walked into the bedroom excitedly with a flyer in his hand, saying he had taken a fancy to a school district house. I took a look. The location was indeed excellent. Then let's sell the wedding house we're living in, I said. My husband was a bit reluctant. This wedding house was only worth about $1 million, and it would be difficult to buy a small 2-bedroom apartment with that money. Why don't you sell that large flat in the city center? As soon as our son is born, we can directly live in a big house. I looked at him and fell silent. The large flat was the lifetime savings of my mother. After my father passed away, she pulled me up alone, getting up early and working late every day, selling marinated goods. Over more than 10 years with amazing perseverance, she opened several chain stores in succession and made the business thrive. But because of overwork in her early years, she suffered from a lot of diseases. As soon as I graduated from college, she fell ill. Before she passed away, she used most of her savings to buy me a house in the city center. She said she had suffered so much so that I wouldn't have to suffer anymore. The house was my support for the rest of my life and must be protected. Thinking of this, I said to my husband, "The large flat cannot be sold. My mother specifically told me so." My husband looked a bit unhappy, but quickly composed himself. He patiently persuaded me, "My darling, you should consider our child. Your mother surely doesn't want her precious grandson to be crowded in a small old and dilapidated house of 80 or 90 square meters when he is born." He was really good at reasoning. When we first got married, he complained that the wedding house was too small and too remote. I asked him to move into my house, but he refused. He insisted that I sell the house and buy a large villa with him. It can be said that this was not the first time he had set his sights on my house. I am not an innocent and infatuated girl who is ignorant of the world. Growing up at the bottom of society, I have seen many scenes of brothers fighting each other for a penny until they were bloodied. I am more sensitive to money than ordinary girls. Perhaps seeing my cold face and unwavering attitude, he was a bit angry. A woman can't just think about herself. You are a mother now. How can you be so selfish? Selfish. When I heard this word, I couldn't help but laugh. Then it's just right. Let's just abort the child so that I don't have to be bound by the false name of being a mother. He stared at me in astonishment, suddenly turned around and slammed the door. The door banged shut, and my heart suddenly clenched. The doctor had said that I had a heart condition and should not be frightened. When we were in love, if a driver honked at me, my husband would chase after the driver and scold him severely. After scolding, he would come to coax me. "Baby, don't be afraid." The cautious look was as if he was treating a baby. But now the way he turned his face made me feel so strange. I tossed and turned in bed all night. At dawn, the doorbell rang. I thought my husband had forgotten his key. But when I opened the door, I saw my mother-in-law and sister-in-law standing outside with big and small bags. "Shelley, I heard you are pregnant. I specially came to take care of you and won't leave from now on." As my mother-in-law spoke, she walked towards the second bedroom. I called my husband, but the phone rang twice and was hung up. "Where is my brother?" The sister-in-law slumped on the sofa and asked me squintingly. I frowned and said, "He hasn't come back yet." My mother-in-law looked a bit unhappy when she heard this. "Wang Liang works overtime all day long. As his wife, you should be more understanding of him. Don't always sleep late at home." Then she looked at the kitchen. "Why haven't you made breakfast yet? What will Heisey eat when he comes back?" She glanced at the wall clock. It was 5:15. It was indeed not early. In the countryside, chickens would crow at this time. I lowered my head and went to the kitchen to prepare. I hadn't slept all night and felt dizzy. From the living room came the laughing and scolding sounds of the sister-in-law playing games. My mother-in-law opened both durians I had bought yesterday and filled a large basin. The mother and daughter ate quickly. When I brought the food out, the basin was already empty. My nose soured and tears almost fell. Although the days when I lived with my mother were poor, even if there was only one egg, my mother would let me eat it first. Now that my mother was gone, no one treated me like a child anymore. At 9 o'clock, after reheating the food several times, Wang Liang finally came back. My mother-in-law hugged her son and greeted him warmly. The brother and sister laughed and played. Wearing an apron, I watched them as if I were an outsider. A family of 3 reunited. My husband ate the pan-fried dumplings and said indifferently, "I have paid the deposit, 20,000 yuan. I didn't react for a moment. What deposit? The school district house. Wang Liang avoided my gaze. Didn't we agree? The sister-in-law leaned over. Brother, are you going to buy a house? When her brother nodded, she asked again. Then are you going to sell this house? My husband glanced at me but remained silent. Suddenly, my mother-in-law interjected. Sell? What's the value of this house? Your sister-in-law's house is truly precious. It must be worth 8 or 9 million, right? I heard that school district houses near Wulu Road have skyrocketed to 30,000 yuan per square meter. When that one is sold, buying a 300 square meter luxury apartment will be no problem. As she spoke, she eyed me cautiously, observing my reaction. I stared at my husband, hoping he would say something. Sensing my increasingly anxious gaze, he finally broke his silence, but his words instantly sank my heart. It's just a house. Why do you keep fixating on it? Since it's a house your mother gave you, I should have a share too. My mother-in-law chimed in beside him. We're family. Why divide things so clearly? Anyway, it will all belong to my grandson in the future. She then glanced at the house's layout and added, when you buy a new home, this house will be empty, right? My husband immediately grasped her implication. An empty house is a waste. Once we move out, you can hire movers to move in. That's perfect. My mother-in-law replied with a smile, sealing the deal. The 3 of them conversed effortlessly, arranging my property as if it were their own, never once asking for my opinion, as though I were invisible. My husband didn't even look at me. Had he already treated this house as his personal property? The truth was, we had both contributed to the down payment, and we were both paying off the mortgage. This house was at least half mine. How dare he arbitrarily decide to let his family live here? By now my expression had turned icy. Several times my husband met my gaze but deliberately ignored it. In fact, he knew my stance. He just pretended not to see it. My sister-in-law was overly excited, already behaving as if she were the mistress of the house. She even pointed at the dressing table in my bedroom and said, Sister, leave this dressing table behind, and the cosmetics on it too. I can't be bothered to buy new ones. This dressing table had been custom-made by a craftsman for me before my mother passed away. She had said, girls should always live elegantly and stylishly. Only when you treat yourself well will others treat you well. I had remembered these words deeply. The skincare products and cosmetics on the table were all carefully selected by me, each from top brands, with a total value of nearly 100,000 yuan. I could never give away the fruits of my labor and my mother's heartfelt gift. As soon as my sister-in-law finished speaking, I refused without hesitation. These things were left to me by my mother. I have no intention of giving them away. My sister-in-law's half-smile froze instantly. My husband frowned and said, Aren't they just cosmetics? How much can they cost? As her sister-in-law, shouldn't you care for her? My sister-in-law chimed in sarcastically, Brother, don't make things difficult for sister. She clearly doesn't see me as family. If I keep pestering her, I'll just be a nuisance. My mother-in-law pretended to scold her and pushed her gently. What nonsense are you talking about, child? Of course your sister sees you as family, not just a dressing table. Even if you wanted this house, she wouldn't hesitate, right? My mother-in-law had always been adept at moral kidnapping. Though she seemed to be asking me, she left no room for refusal. She assumed I would comply as usual, but she was mistaken. My mother was my bottom line. Anyone who dared to scheme against my deceased mother would face consequences. I looked at her with colder eyes than ever and said, Family or not, my son and I are getting a divorce. Save the false intimacy. Upon hearing this, the 3 of them froze, staring at me as if searching for signs of jest on my face. I ignored them and turned toward the bedroom. Xiaoli, my husband called out, his voice filled with anger on the verge of exploding. Are you crazy? He suddenly roared, losing control. You're about to be a mother. How can you be so capricious? Don't you think about the child at all? You keep talking about divorce at every turn. What will happen to the child after the divorce? I touched my flat abdomen, feeling a pang of softness in my heart. Yes, what wrong had the child done? Was it right for adults to use the child as a pawn for their own interests? Seeing my slightly softened expression, my husband softened his tone and approached me. Xiaoli, I'm also doing this for our family's good. Can you stop nitpicking about the house? I looked at him deeply, not hastily responding. That night I woke up coughing. My husband was not in the room. The light in my mother-in-law's room was on, and whispers came from inside. My husband said, You all should lay low recently. Don't act until she agrees to sell the house. Wait until we buy the school district house. My mother-in-law said, I think she's quite vigilant. She even mentioned divorce today. Will there be any trouble? Don't worry. The child is her weakness. As long as the child is here, she can't escape. My mother-in-law said, Good. Luckily, you listened to me and poked holes in the condom earlier, or we'd never have gotten her pregnant. My sister-in-law said, Wasn't that my idea? When you buy the new house, this one must be transferred to my name as agreed. My husband replied, No problem. Once Xiaoli has the baby, all her assets will belong to our family. No need to divide them. Standing outside the door, listening to their scheming words, I felt my limbs go numb and icy cold. No wonder I kept falling into their traps. They had been calculating me all along, first using the child to bind me, then turning my prenuptial property into joint marital assets. After several moves, my mother's lifelong efforts would be wiped out. When she was alive, she always told me to guard against human nature, that people were the best at disguising themselves and would stop at nothing to achieve their goals. I remembered that when we first started dating, I clearly stated that I didn't want children. Wang Liang not only magnanimously agreed but also comforted me. I thought I had met a good man who understood and loved me. Now I realized it was just a strategic retreat, pretending not to mind while secretly planning to get me pregnant. Thinking of the child, I felt a wave of sadness. This child could not be saved. I could not let him be born into a family full of schemes but devoid of love. After making up my mind, I returned to bed. Shortly after, my husband came in. When he began snoring loudly, I quietly picked up his phone, unlocked it with his fingerprint, and hid in the bathroom to scroll through all his chat records. I found nothing, but I didn't believe it was that simple. Wang Liang had a habit that I always found suspicious. He liked to place his phone face down on the table. Sometimes when he was texting and saw me approaching, he would instinctively turn off the screen and pretend to chat with me nonchalantly. All this made me suspect he had something to hide. I clicked on the switch accounts option and found a secondary account. There was only one contact in the address book as Little Vixen. We were all adults, I didn't need to guess what that meant. But I wasn't as sad as I expected. The moment I learned of Wang Liang's scheming, I lost all feelings for him. Now I just wanted to exit this marriage with my maximum personal interests intact. I clicked into the chat window. The most recent record was from 9 a.m. yesterday, the day after Wang Liang stayed out all night. It read, Wang Liang. I'm home, baby. Little Vixen. I wonder how long it will take to have you openly. Wang Liang, don't worry. Once the house is in hand, I'll file for divorce immediately. Little Vixen. Then you better hurry, our baby can't wait. No wonder Wang Liang was in such a hurry. The mistress was pregnant. This was actually good news, as it provided a valid reason for divorce. Scrolling up, the messages were mostly explicit love words. Who would have thought that Wang Liang, who acted so refined and proper in front of me, was so debauched in private? At the very beginning of the chat history, there was even a video. I clicked it open. A sexy siren in the buff twisting her waist and hips, making viewers' hearts itch. But when I saw her face, I couldn't help but gasp. It was her. The next day, I went to the hospital to schedule an abortion. As the instrument entered, I couldn't hold back my tears. I thought I was strong enough, but is there any mother in the world who doesn't love her child? However, if I couldn't give the child complete parental love, not giving birth was a form of kindness. After leaving the operating room, I saw a message from Wang Liang. Wife, remember to come home early today. Some relatives from my hometown are coming. Cook more dishes. Oh, and my nephew wants to eat king crab. Go buy one from the supermarket and some other seafood too. I didn't reply. Instead, I went to an expensive private restaurant and ordered several signature dishes. When I was single, I wore dresses costing thousands of yuan and coats costing tens of thousands, ate king crab and Buddha jumps over the wall whenever I wanted, and traveled abroad on a whim. After marriage, however, Wang Liang found various excuses to restrict my spending. Even though my earning capacity and the assets my mother left me were enough to support my lifestyle, he always tried to turn me into a thrifty girl. Now I realized it was all about money. As I was thinking, Wang Liang called. I didn't answer. He kept calling one after another, so I simply turned off my phone and enjoyed the feast. By the time I finished, it was dark. I took a taxi back home slowly. At this hour, Wang Liang and the others should be having dinner. As I approached the door, noisy voices indeed came from inside. Opening the door, I saw the living room full of people. The air thick with cigarette smoke, sunflower seed shells and bones scattered everywhere, shoes kicked about haphazardly. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were scowling as they served dishes. When they saw me enter, their expressions darkened further. Wang Liang had been toasting guests. Perhaps wanting to show off in front of the men, he pointed at me and shouted, "You're just getting back now? I called you so many times and you didn't answer. You've been spoiled." A few scattered laughs arose. Wang Liang smirked in satisfaction, hurried to the kitchen and helped Mom. Without a word, I went straight to the bedroom, packed a few daily essentials into a suitcase, and called a car that was waiting downstairs. The people outside were still carousing. When they saw me pulling a suitcase out, they fell silent. The room was so quiet that a pin drop could be heard. My mother-in-law was about to scold me, but seeing my determined look, she swallowed her words. I placed the signed divorce agreement on the coffee table. Be at the Civil Affairs Bureau at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I don't want this house. Just divide the funds according to the market price and our investment ratio when purchasing it. I won't take advantage of you. Wang Liang clutched his wine glass, his brow furrowed tightly, staring at me sharply like a knife. What are you throwing a tantrum about now? It was clear he was suppressing his anger. If not for the guests, he might have flipped the table. I remained calm. No tantrum. As I said last time. Last time? We made up last time, didn't we? Wang Liang suddenly stood up and slammed his wine glass on the floor, shattering it into pieces. Everyone looked at each other awkwardly, unsure whether to leave or stay. Like an enraged beast, Wang Liang roared. You keep talking about divorce all the time. Are you childish? Have you thought about the child after the divorce? Do you only care about your own happiness? Is this how a mother should behave? After waiting for him to finish, I slowly took out the abortion consent form from my bag. See clearly? The child is gone. My sister-in-law snatched it and pointed at the words termination of pregnancy, shouting, "You really had an abortion? Are you crazy?" I ignored her and just looked at Wang Liang quietly. I thought he would rage hysterically as usual, but before he could react, my mother-in-law erupted first. "What did you say? What about my precious grandson? Give me back my grandson's life." She grabbed my clothes and wept uncontrollably. Several aunts joined in, poking their fingers at my forehead and scolding. What's wrong with girls these days? They abort children at will, with no sense of responsibility. Exactly, who taught her such behavior? How uncouth. Who on earth could have taught such manners? Like a rotten upper beam leading to a crooked lower one. The startled old woman speaking stared at me in horror, greasy soup dripping from her head, making her look utterly disheveled. I slammed the empty bowl onto the table, glowered at everyone and enunciated slowly. My mother is no longer with us. Anyone who dares to insult her again will have to contend with me. With that, I grabbed my suitcase and turned to leave. Stop, Wang Liang, who had remained silent until now, spoke up rarely. What exactly do you want? It's just a house. Why won't you let it go? I won't agree to a divorce. Move wherever you want. I had long anticipated this move. He had been eyeing my property for ages. To make his efforts go up in smoke, I'd have to hit his weak spot. I sent him a 60-page PPT I'd worked on all night, containing all his chat records with his mistress, along with private videos. Absolutely dramatic, absolutely explosive. I'd made multiple copies, confident he'd understand my message. Yes, I was threatening him, and I gambled he wouldn't refuse, for I knew him too well. If this blew up, he'd not only lose face but also, as the at-fault party in the marriage, suffer a great loss in property distribution if legal proceedings ensued. As a calculating, he couldn't fail to realize this. Sure enough, after reading it, he looked grave and fell silent. Finally, he ground out through clenched teeth, "Fine, let's divorce." His younger sister panicked and rushed to persuade him. "Are you out of your mind? You can't divorce." Wang Liang suddenly erupted, shocking everyone present. His sister almost burst into tears, covered her face, and slammed the door as she left. I dragged my suitcase back to the house my mother had bought. A spacious, beautifully decorated place where I slept soundly and peacefully. The next day, I put on a lovely makeup and went out. Wang Liang was already waiting at the door. He handed me a document. "Sign this non-disclosure agreement. Promise never to leak the contents of that PPT, and I'll agree to the divorce." I glanced at it and signed readily. I just wanted a divorce not to ruin him. Otherwise, I'd have exposed his infidelity in front of his relatives yesterday. I hoped to end this marriage decently. Creating a public scandal wasn't my style, but I never expected that while I let Wang Liang go, he wouldn't let me be. He posted a lengthy diatribe on his social media, accusing me of countless crimes and advising some selfish, double-standard women not to enter marriage casually. Perhaps you just want to play around and walk away when you're unhappy. But for us responsible men, marriage is sacred. We invest time and energy. With a single word of board, all our efforts go down the drain. In the 2 years of our marriage, I gave you everything you asked for. I earned the money, did the housework, picked up the deliveries. At midnight, when you craved ice watermelon, I drove halfway across the city to find a 24-hour cold drink shop. During your menstrual period, I was at your beck and call like a servant. On holidays, you demanded expensive gifts to satisfy your vanity. I treated you like a little princess, but you always balbong yourself as a fairy, yet you're actually selfish, double-standard, vain, full of lies and lazy. You aborted our child behind my back and forced me to leave the marriage with nothing. Meeting a woman like you who preys on others is the worst luck of my life. This post sparked a flood of comments condemning me as a bottomless gold digger. Some voices defended me, but they were quickly drowned out by the public outrage. Since Wang Liang and I worked at the same company with highly overlapping social circles, his smear campaign in front of all the company's leaders and colleagues was clearly intended to destroy me. He accused me of being full of lies, but he was the real liar. What do you mean I did the housework? That's laughable. If I remember correctly, Wang Liang could count on his fingers the times he'd set foot in the kitchen. Unfortunately, this wasn't the time to be indignant. I had to find a way to expose his hypocrisy. The next day at the office, as expected, many people whispered about me, especially the men, who looked at me with prejudice, having likely had unpleasant experiences in gender relations. I pretended not to notice and focused on my work. My best friend Xia came to comfort me, clearly upset. "Lee, why did you get divorced suddenly? You didn't even tell me in advance." I glanced at her belly and said calmly, "Wang Liang is having an affair." Xia exclaimed in shock, then quickly lowered her voice. "Are you sure? Could you be mistaken?" Looking at her guilty expression, I smiled. "No mistake. Last month, Wang Liang bought a Van Cleef Arpels necklace. I thought it was for me." I looked toward Supervisor Bai, who was now wearing the latest Van Cleef Arpels necklace. Xia followed my gaze, and her expression instantly contorted like a venomous snake, sinister and terrifying. She then touched her bare neck and walked away dejectedly. During lunch break, while everyone napped, I sneaked to the pantry and indeed heard a man and a woman arguing fiercely. "Stop talking. You're a liar. Isn't one woman enough for you? You even hit on that old hag. Don't you feel disgusted? She reeks of old age. How could you bear to be with her?" The girl speaking was Xia, and the man facing her was my ex-husband Wang Liang. Yes, Xia was Wang Liang's mysterious mistress. At first I couldn't believe it. In my heart, Xia had always been my best friend. She joined the company before me and taught me the ropes when I was new, warming my heart in this cold, calculating world. Later, as we grew closer, she learned about the multimillion-dollar property my mother had left me. Your mother was so good to you, she'd said. I'd never forget the complex look in her eyes. Though it made me uncomfortable, I thought it was just human nature, given her poor upbringing and constant ridicule from relatives. But I never imagined she'd betray me for a house, having an affair with Wang Liang. Now, faced with these baseless accusations, Wang Liang flushed with anger as he defended himself. What nonsense! When did I hit on that old woman? Xia shook off his hand. Stop pretending. Don't think I didn't see that necklace around Supervisor Bai's neck. The latest Van Cleef Arpels, over 25,000 yuan. Wang Liang, you're so generous. Wang Liang almost laughed in exasperation. You must be delusional from pregnancy. How could you suspect me of being with Supervisor Bai? That's an insult. Use your head. Even if I were to cheat, why would I choose her? Supervisor Bai, our department head, was in her 40s and single. A strong, decisive woman who never let slights go unpunished. She was practically immune to gossip. Xia persisted. Talk is cheap. I was fooled by your sweet words. I've been with you for over a year and even got pregnant for you, but I've got nothing to show for it. You said you'd get Li's house for us. Write my name? You're full of hot air. What a disgrace. Wang Liang lost patience. Weren't you the one crawling into this affair? Now that you got nothing, you blame me? I regret ever getting involved with you. Even after I cheated on Li, she didn't make a scene. Why are you throwing a fit? Betraying your own best friend. What does that say about you? I watched their passionate confrontation, reveling in the satisfaction. Kershi, the triumph was short-lived. Wang Liang soon coaxed Xia back into his arms, their embrace intense until someone entered to fetch water, forcing them apart in shy embarrassment. Timing my move, I slipped to the restroom and dialed 110. The police arrived just as the lunch break ended, everyone back at their desks. Who reported the incident? Heads turned at the voice. I raised my hand promptly. Uncle policeman, it was me. One officer glanced my way. Did you lose something? Where? I gestured to the pantry. There at noon. Wang Liang and Xia paled instantly. The police explained the situation to Supervisor Bai, requesting access to the pantry surveillance. She agreed readily, with security leaders assisting personally. Just then, I noticed Xia signal Wang Liang. Like a fool, he stepped forward to shout at me. Li, what trick are you playing now? I didn't even see you enter the pantry today. How could you lose something there? I scoffed. Since when do I need your permission to lose things? Why are you so fixated on my movements? Do you spend all day spying on me? Don't tell me. You have a crush on me? My exaggerated pretense threw him off balance. Nonsense. I'd never fancy you. I just happened to notice. Everyone knows you're a liar. I don't want you wasting police resources or embarrassing the company. Then we should let the police investigate thoroughly. I smiled. If I lied, I'll face legal consequences. But why are you so agitated? Did you do something shameful in the pantry we should know about? Speechless, he stood there as staff accessed the footage. Their faces turned ashen. When the video played their insults, old hag, disgusting, wrinkled. Supervisor Bai's fury was palpable. Her icy glare forced them to cower. Poor woman, she bought luxury jewelry for fun, only to be dragged into this mess. Mentally I apologized. Sorry, but after all the overwork you gave me, we're even. Thankfully, Supervisor Bai maintained professionalism, but others reacted with shock. Their expressions shifted like peaking opera masks, especially upon hearing the confession of betrayal. Sympathetic glances turned to me. Never seen such audacity, cheating then blaming her online. Even rabbits don't eat near their wa. Sleeping with your best friend's husband? Greedily eyeing her house? Shameless. They deserve each other. Red-faced and humiliated, Wang Liang and Xia Xiaohunbuder vanished as their kiss appeared on screen. Disgusting. Filthy adulterers. The ordeal ended in my total victory. 2 years later I spotted them at a Shitanting, haggard arguing wildly. Wang Liang still griped about money. Xia screeched like a fishwife. When our eyes met, his shock was evident. I stood poised, stylish, radiant, nothing like his frumpy, bitter wife. Still single, Li? Second marriages are hard. I'm having our third child, she jeered. I gestured to my husband in a camel trench coat. Her smirk froze. Tall, dashing, he outshone Wang Liang entirely. You think he loves you for you? It's your house. Wang Liang sneered. I laughed. Not everyone's as shallow as you. Every property he's bought Hunho bears only my name. Speechless, he gaped as my husband led me away, my complaint about Michelin dining lingering. In the rearview mirror they raged at each other, pathetic, unchanging. Some people stay trapped in their own mess. While I'd already turned the page. The end.